Alright, hello everybody, I am back with a little update on the mock-up for my 128 chassis, and so I wanted to show you what has worked so far and what I'm going to have to change on the design. The one thing that I have not printed is the spacers for here, so this is the highest the pod is going to be, which is fairly high. There is a couple of mil down there, so it's meant to be lower, but this is the highest is going to be. And so couple of things that I'm going to have to redesign. It's the mounting position for the bumper. I'm losing my words. And I'm probably going to move this a little bit to the front as well, like a few mils, so I can move the servo a little bit back. And the reason why is that I did not account for how big those axles were on the inside here, so I have a lesser angle that I would like. It's going to be a very sufficient angle for racing, but for slow speeds I would like to have a little bit more, and I have quite a little bit of travel left, so all I need to do is basically move these back maybe 2 mil would be plenty enough. And so for that I'm going to have to remove this, and at the moment this is just too near the bottom of the servo, so when I mount the bumper and I put the bolts over here, it's hindering a little bit the movement of that. Other than that, this came out wrong from the print. I'm not sure why, but the ball ends inside this part of the damper worked, so I can get those done in 2 pieces but already assembled. I'm just gonna have to work on the tolerances a little bit, but as you can see the ball end is already inside. Focus, my friend. Focus? Yes. The ball end is actually printed together with the damper, and so this is good. At the moment it's just a little bit stiff, so I'm gonna have to work on that. Other than that, this is gonna work really great. So I'm not sure what happened here. This came out solid in one piece. I had to make a hole. The hole was not done, so there might have been a problem with the 3D file. I will take a look at that. This is just a cheapy Kyosho axle that I have. Of course I'm gonna get the regular ball diff that I'm using, but this is just for the purpose of doing a mock-up. And so you can see the way the floating battery is going to work. There's meant to be a second Velcro over here, and so it's going to be velcroed to the upper plate, and so this way the battery is still really low but it's not touching the bottom. I think I'm gonna go with shorter poles. I think I can get rid of at least 2 or 3 mil over there on the poles. And other than that, well, let me show you. Oh yeah, the other thing that I have to work on is the pins that I get, my quick release. They are missing like alpha mil on each side, so I'm gonna have to get some new one done which are just the right size. So other than that, everything is in place. This is the floating front hand, so exactly the same system that I have on my 112 pan car, and so it is working really well. It is mounted on those 2 pivot points with the O-rings at the bottom, as you can see, because they're red. And so the tighter you mount it, the stiffer the whole assembly gets. And of course, if you change the amount of spacers you put between the front and the back, you can change the caster angle. So this attached with the pin, it's a similar system. You're going to be able to put a different thickness and stiffness of O-rings over there in order to have a little bit more dampening on the travel up. But I think I'm just going to run spacers instead of O-rings just for the friction. It would be possible to add some very small springs as well. I might rework the height depending on the pins that I have. If I have enough height, I might put springs, but I would really like the front end to be just floating and not have a spring in the uprights. Other than that, the uprights work really superbly. You can see the way the geometry is working. Like I said before, all I have to do is just rework the position of the servo, so I have more turn than I have right now. Okay, let's go to the back. This is the pod where the motor is going to be mounted over there, so brushless. I have mounted a diffuser at the moment, but you could mount on top of that the rear wing for the body. So you see the way the diffuser is sliding here. There is plenty of space for everything. It's perfectly placed. You can see the pod has a slight curvature here in order to let the chassis freely move up and down. So this is the chassis plates. The only thing solidly mounted to the chassis are the two poles for the upper deck and the pods. Everything else is floating on the chassis. So the upper deck is mounted. This is it's the plastic that's making it bend like that. Of course, it's absolutely not going to be that bending with the carbon or the FRP. And so here is the upper deck. So the upper deck is mounted on those two poles over there. So this way I have the maximum amount of flex along the chassis, and there is very few structures that is going to stop the chassis from doing its job of flexing. You can see there is a lot of relief cuts all over the place in order for the most amount of the chassis to flex. This is basically the spring for the rear, and so the pivot point is all the way to the front, so we have a pretty vertical travel at the back. And you can see the way the suspensions are going to work. Right now I'm using whatever springs that I have. Like I said, I've had some problem with those parts, so I'm going to have to rework those. But you can see the way, sorry for the shakiness, you can see the way the suspension is going to work. So it's basically up and down, and then when we go left and right, it's going to move like that. It's not smooth at the moment because those parts didn't come out right at all. They are too big, but I can tell now from having them that this is going to work perfectly well. And so the reason why there is all these holes over there is for you to be able to set the tubes, the dampers, absolutely where you want, depending on if you want more lateral spring and suspension, then you're going to move them more to the inside. If you don't want, you want the spring but not the dampening, you move them more to the outside, and then you have two positions over there. And then I'm gonna have to put a stop over here for the spring, because right now I had to put two springs because I don't have springs that are long enough. So in order to use the short springs, I'm gonna have to put a stop somewhere over there. So the travel is gonna be fairly short, but of course you're gonna be able to play on the travel amount depending on which one of the holes you're using. And you can run it as well without the springs here, just as a grease damper. So of course inside there you have a traditional damper with the rings pre-cut. And so here you go. This is the concept for this chassis. There are obviously a few tweaks that I'm going to have to work, and as far as the plates themselves, the upper deck and the main chassis plates, as well as this here, those two plates are going to be carbon. This deck is going to be carbon as well. So those are carbon or FRP, I'm not sure yet. It's going to depend on the pricing. Most likely it's going to be FRP first, and there will be a carbon version depending on the demand. But those are pretty much ready to go for cuts. All I'm going to do is increase the front over there a little bit more. And once I've done that, I might change the position of the hole to the regular traditional Kyosho mounting hole in the front, so I can use the entire bumper sets that I have for the other car, this one over here. And so here you can have a little look to compare. It is the same wheelbase, it's a 98 wheelbase, it's the same width, it's a tiny bit wider without offsets than the AMR, but really not much. It's probably a mil wider. Otherwise the stance is very similar. The height as well, of course you have those dampers over there, and then this is going to be the body that is going to come with. And so here we are. That's the little update on this chassis. I have a little bit more work to get done on modifying a few parts for it, but other than that I'm quite satisfied with the fitment of everything. I just have to work a few parts over there. I was thinking about machining the axles for the front, but I think it's just going to be easier if I move these just 2 or 3 mil to the back. I'm getting all my angle back again over there. So not a big deal. I'm gonna get the right pins over there because I'm missing half a mil, and it's going to be ready for its first test drives fairly soon, I think. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm gonna now rework on those little plastic parts. The machined CNC parts are pretty much okay the way they are, with the exception of the placement of the holes in the front. So this is going to move, the flex plate, the floating plate is going to move the front pivot a few mil in order for the servo to move a few mil as well. And other than that, that's it. Really pleased with how it's turning out. I can't wait to have the FRP to really test, because this SLA is completely useless to do any testing. It's absolutely not the right. It's really just for fitment. There is no mechanical resemblance to the real material. So you can see it's like cheese, melting cheese. But you see, for all the fitments, I'm really pleased. Everything is going to really fit super nicely. And yeah, I think that's it for the moment. So I'll come back once I have little updates on that. And in the meantime, stay safe everyone. See you later. Bye bye.